added or subtracted much to this situation. But the college itself, the faculty, was a strong faculty. And I think this needs to be remembered. In 1926 and 27, there was evidence of this strong faculty member. There were graduates of some of the better schools throughout the United States: Harvard, University of Chicago, Sorbonne, the New England Conservatory of Music, Ohio State University, the universities of Michigan and Wisconsin and California, Virginia, Tennessee. There were many of these schools represented here on the staff. And that's to our advantage here, and it was to the advantage of the school at that time. They were saying to the individuals who were coming, they were saying to them, "Come, we have something to offer to you." And it resulted in the student body becoming involved in literary societies, the Cosmium, the Independent, and then in later years, the Canterbury Club was an honorary, and the Chemistry Club. These were honorary clubs, and they added to the atmosphere of the school, the college, by promoting literary activities. And there were many plays and many lecturers who came from a distant area, distant piece, who would come and lecture or make a talk or make a presentation. And then the faculty itself, I will remember H.Y. Clark and Miss Brand, Willa Brand, joining with the Chautauqua people who would come here in the summer, and they would join with them to be some of the actors on the stage for the Chautauqua Week. And it was appreciated here in Glenville. And it wasn't the backwoods area or the situation, the backwash of civilization. It was anything else but that. And the literary societies gave evidence to this. Another point that I would mention, when I came in about 1930, the fall semester, there were a great many individuals who had been here for quite some time. And the president's wife would join in the classes. She didn't teach, if I remember correctly, but she was involved in taking these classes and eventually got her degree here, if I remember correctly, which was a compliment to us all. The faculty members, when I arrived, they made an attempt in those days to have standards, to demand a quality of work. And if you didn't measure up to it, you came back another semester to try it again. But this is evidence of the high quality, the high standards that the faculty demanded. Now, the Canal Hall had been completed. Verona Maple Hall had been completed when I arrived, and it was pretty well filled by students. And it wasn't until the war years in the 40s that Louis Bennett Hall was opened for more students, particularly the faculty apartments there and the students, male students, in the rest of the building. Just as Pickens Hall now has a variety of classes, a variety of rooms for occupancy, and there are faculty members who have been housed in that building too. That, I think, takes care of that situation. Are there other questions you would like to raise?
Well, you've mentioned the dormitories. Where did you live when you arrived here?
I lived downtown on Main Street.
In a boarding house, I guess.
Well, it was boarding, but it was a relative. I came here from Florida because, well, in those days, unless your family had a pretty good bank account, you didn't go off to school down there because of the expense of it. Florida University or the Florida State at Tallahassee. And it was just sort of a fluke that we came north. And that's what we found lodging on Main Street with relatives.
Was that a big change?
Yes, it was. Weather-wise, it was a big change, and also I was working in a theater, a 1,200-seat house, and I had been out of school for some time, and it was a change to be back in school and to get to know the students who came from various sundry counties, like Braxton or Lewis or Rome County or Calhoun or Doddridge or some of those counties. It was good to make acquaintances there. And it was good to see what the athletic situation was, because down along the east coast of Florida, you didn't have very many colleges, if any at all, to speak of. There was one or two private ones, but it was a situation that you had to grow into it and to become involved and take care of the weather and walk a little more perhaps than you would otherwise. But it was not unpleasant, it was pleasant.
Now you mentioned students, and I heard a lot of surrounding counties. Was there not much student diversity as far as that goes back then?
There was a great deal of diversity. The students who came down from Richwood, well, they came on the train, and they could get in close to Glenville by train or by bus from Weston or by taxi, and they arrived and made good. One of our good friends, even to this day, Lloyd Jones, is out of the Richwood area, and he, after getting his degree here, he became the assistant to the president. And I suppose today he would be called a business manager. And he had some experience in accounting, and he put this to good use here at the college. And there were others from Spencer, that is Roane County, and your circle of friends was certainly broadened by this influx of students from outer areas. Can you describe some of the campus activities at that time? Well, the Canterbury Club was one. It was a literary society. The Nimgahau Players was another. This was mainly for the presentation of plays and such. And by the way, Mrs. Robber, I think, belonged to that one and took part in plays. I was in one opposite her way back, and she did quite well. Kept me on my toes to either ad-lib or to get ahead of her in the script there. Were there a lot of activities off the campus for students? You mean in town? Yeah. Not very many opportunities. And of course the students then, there was an inclination to stay on campus during the weekend, mainly because transportation and the expense of going to and from their home. And there wasn't a problem in those days of college parking as there is now, because they didn't have cars or pickup trucks to drive back and forth. And there was no parking problem to speak of. I don't recall right off. Well, let me go back then. I try to continue on your question. There were activities that the students were involved in, once plays, and then there were dances, social affairs, and the old gymnasium was usually pretty well decorated for these activities. Sometimes it was, the decorations were bid out to people in town who had that skill and could use crepe paper all over the place, and the proms and the dances, or the socials as they were called, took place in the old gymnasium. It was pretty well used, not only for activities, but also for enrollment, and also for basketball and such. That was one of the main activities. And Fortunatus, or Nate Rawbaugh, gained quite a reputation by putting out the winning ball clubs that he did produce here.
But while we're still in your student years, what were the classes like at that time, the curriculum?
Usually English was required, history required, science required, or biology. Those were the main required courses. And of course you took electives to go along with them, and hoping that the electives would fill in at some future date for your own degree, or your certificate, or diploma as it was sometimes called. I don't right now recall all the elective classes. There were music classes, also art classes. All of these were important. And then there was a tendency, a welcomed tendency on the part of the faculty to become involved in bringing plays to Glenville, bringing lecturers, bringing speakers. Here was Rabbi Stephen Wise. He was one of the faculty members, met him on board a ship to England. They fell talking, and this was Curtis Baxter, who taught English here, literature, English, and he made Rabbi Stephen Wise promise that he would come to this school and give a lecture, or become the commencement speaker. And so he did. I remember Rabbi Stephen Wise. Also, the figures on the lecture circuit were rather interesting. Here was Amelia Earhart. She was here, and here was Mrs. Roosevelt in the latter part of the 30s and early 40s. She was here to lecture and to gain support for her projects of living here in West Virginia, the projects for communities that would be self-sustaining, self-sufficient. And she did quite well by us in talking, and she, at that time there was a novel out concerning a teacher, and she paid a tribute to one of the faculty members that he had reminded her of this strong teacher in that novel of the period. That was Hunter Whiting, sort of a English, he was an English-French professor, and he managed to, I think in that time he was driving her to Clarksburg to catch the train. And Lowell Thomas was here too, Sunday afternoon. He finally found his way to Glenville from Spencer, I think, and the afternoon lecture went on. But there was a great deal of this outside activity to acquaint us. And then we had what was called the bus, driven by sometimes by Nate Rawbaugh, sometimes by a student, and sometimes by faculty member, other faculty members. And there were plays, Shakespearean plays, given in Pittsburgh. And the trip was made to Pittsburgh in those days to stay overnight on a Saturday night presentation of play. I went to see The Merchant of Venice with Maud Adams and Otis Skinner, who were the main players of that day. But you see, the school reached out to educate too.
This is not really a question concerning Glenville State College, but how long did it take to get to Pittsburgh in those days?
I think it was 6 hours, something like that. It could have been 7, but I think about 6 hours. And today, how long does it take? 2.5, 3 hours? Something like that.
Now, you mentioned a few minutes ago a commencement that you remembered. They similar to now? Different? If so, how?
Yes, in a way they were different. Strong individuals from the viewpoint of the speaking strength. And there weren't as many, I use this carefully because I don't want to be misunderstood. There weren't as many political figures. There were more national figures, figures that were strong in their own right, no matter where they were, no matter where they went to school, no matter where they spoke or where they delivered an address. And I remember well one commencement speaker from West Liberty. No, I beg your pardon. He was from the religious school up there, and he was quite a speaker, rolling off his words, rolling off the tip of his tongue, the literary quotations that he wanted to use to foster or to strengthen his own statements. And it's much like some of us, to be or not to be, using that expression. He didn't have to identify. We knew by the way he spoke that this was his quotation, his address to the student body. And these commencements in those days were held in the old auditorium, and they were pretty well filled. The auditorium was pretty well filled.
Okay. Now, you also taught here, of course, for many years.
Yes.
What were some of your experiences that you remember during that time?
Well, there was a change in the curriculum. I was involved in a 9 weeks term originally. In fact, I was brought here to assist in working out a 9 weeks term, mainly from the viewpoint of the student teachers. They would have a full day's experience in the classroom rather than hit and miss 1 hour a day or something of that sort, a classroom hour. And that bit of change in the curriculum, we thought might be the partial answer to the student teaching program, which we were all involved in. And well, suffice to say, a few years later, one of the accrediting agencies was here. They were here, quite a few members. They interviewed faculty members and students, and some of the faculty members didn't like it was too short a term, so they decided that the term was too short for adequate, I think the quotation, adequate research. So we gradually changed back to the semester program rather than the 9 weeks term, 2 terms per semester. The Dean Adkins was the promoter of the 9 weeks term, and he was the one who went on to other areas and didn't take well, to put it mildly, the program wasn't carried on for a length of time that would give us really a strong view, a strong understanding of the strengths and weaknesses and whether it should be changed. And well, it was changed.
About what time frame was this initiated, and then?
In the 50s, early 50s, and then I think we were out of it by, maybe the 67, 66, something of that sort. But there were quite a few good years there of using this program.
Do you have any personal opinions on the program?
Well, yes, I thought it was good because they went out into the community to live. Some of them commuted. I remember one student, I always was concerned, I'll put it this way, not mildly concerned, but always concerned about, could the student get to that school? Could the student be involved in the school activity without taking too many hours of travel time? And one of the professors here today, she drove, and I questioned her about it, she drove from the area over around Weston all the way to St. Mary's every day. And she convinced me, more or less, that she could manage it. And well, so she did. She's still living here and teaching here on campus today. But she was a stalwart, strong individual. So there was always this concern. Could they do it? And the other concern was, did they have enough money to board off campus if they had to do that, or drive? And most of them convinced. And then the third thing, or third and fourth, was the question, did they have clothes that would show the mark of the teacher? Did they have clothes that they could wear? And I remember that with Dr. Hardway, who later on became president down at Fairmont, and Mrs. Adams, who taught here for years before going over into Virginia, we were always involved in trying to find either a briefcase so they could carry their material in, look at mine today, or clothes, a suit for the men or a suitable dress for the women, and those who were doing activities such as physical education, that they had the type of clothes that would indicate that they were the teacher in the class, which is important, which was important, and still is.
Are there any faculty or students from either the time you were a student or while you taught that perhaps come to mind, or maybe you still know, still talk to on a regular basis?
There are a few. The president of the Historical Society here for Gilmer County, Hunter Armentrout, was a former student, and still we talk, converse. I support him and his Historical Society's endeavor, and he supports me, I think, in endeavor up here on campus or elsewhere. Yes, there were quite a few. Some of them were stalwart, and they made the difference. And many of them went on to greater acclaim elsewhere, and we see each other now and then, and it's most interesting. And also, I would mention, gratifying.
Do you feel that because you were a student here, did that influence in any way the time you were an instructor here? And if so, how?
I don't think so. If you're asking, did it give us greater concern, I don't think so. You see, I was out for quite a few years there between the time I started teaching until I went into the college teaching. And there were many of those that I had known for years, and or had known their father and mother in school situations in this county and in other counties. So I don't think that there was any problem there, if that's what you're asking.
Can you describe any campus changes that took place all the time that you've been here? There are.
As I walked into the library today, I thought, as I looked out on the shrubbery there and the beds that were in bloom, there's a little more evidence of budgetary items for landscaping that we didn't have in the earlier periods, because there just wasn't enough money coming from the legislature that allowed the administration to do that. But now there seems to be a beautiful approach to the campus. It's a living place for students to so that they would, as I see it, the philosophy behind all of it, that the students would have something of beauty to remember and to live with. And not only the exterior of the buildings, but the interior. And then, of course, the ever-present computer, whether you like it or not, it's here. And most certainly here in the Materials Center of the library, there's great evidence of the expense of the modern day curriculum. And why shouldn't we spend it on the latest thing if it's proven to be worthwhile?
Now, you also put together a slide presentation on the history of Glenville State College. Can you tell us how that developed and how you've used it over the years?
Well, over the years is right, because I was just totaling the other day the number of times I gave that lecture or talk. It wasn't 20, it was up in 30 sometimes, to various groups. The Elder Hostel group, at one time there was a group of incoming freshmen, another time the summer school people, another time the individuals who were here for a summer term that was given. It developed from the need for this sort of thing for the centennial. Glenville Normal School came about in 1872, and so in the celebration of this centennial, it was thought that we should have a lecture or a slide presentation, and that's what was done. And I suppose because of my interest over the years in the college and knowing about it and studying it and researching it, I don't know who appointed me. I don't remember right now. Or whether I'm sure I didn't elbow my way in. But anyhow, it was thought that this would be good. And it was used too at the time that President Simmons was inaugurated. And that was in the auditorium. And I remember its use there because at the end of the slide presentation, we recorded the clock striking 12. And at that appropriate time, that was the end of the slide presentation. And on the screen would be this view of the clock tower with the striking of 12. And that particular morning, some of the faculty members jumped up and ran because they thought they were late for their 12 o'clock class. And it wasn't 12 at all. It was about 1 hour of 12 at the end of the lecture. But we were glad to give the talk commemorating the coming of President Simmons, and at other times we've used it over the campus and off campus too, to alumni groups here, there, and yon.
In doing the research for the slide presentation, are there a couple stories or events that pop into your mind that kind of struck you in some way?
Well, the style, menswear and ladies' wear over the years certainly changed. It's evidence of this was seen in the pictures of the individuals. And there's one county club. There was one young man on one end. It looked as though he was in what was in later years called the zoot suit, and sort of a long draping coat. And the people seeing the slides sort of chuckled at some of the styles. And then, of course, it gave us all a better perspective of the laboratories. Here was the chemistry laboratory. Here was the library. Here was the principal's office, which was rather bare-like, but there were pictures in it. And a roll-top desk, if I remember correctly, and a few chairs. And I don't imagine E.G. Robo, the president, had to have many people in to sit in the chair and to listen to his discussion of their activities. But it gave me particularly, the number of times that I gave this lecture, it gave me an appreciation of things past, of those people who were involved in making the institution what it was and is, that there should be a strong appreciation of their activities. Many of them had to go to Charleston often. The same thing is happening today. In order to get the budget passed, that was important then, it's important today. So there are many similarities there about the past and the present. And also it somewhat gives us a view of the future. Is this what we're going to have to be involved in for years to come? Making a strong bid for the budget items that are surely and certainly needed.
Now you've mentioned the past, present, future, and you did a lot of work on the research and history of the college. Did you gain a sense of, describe what you think is a sense of the history of Glenville State College? What's Glenville State College?
I don't want to use a trite expression, but I'm glad you asked me that. I have strong feelings from the very beginning. In this lecture, I well remember the quote that I used, that there are, sir, some individuals who love a small college. The Daniel Webster trial. And there are, sir, I say to you, and I say to others, there are, sir, some of us who love a small college. And then the other thing, here is an individual in Precious Bain, a book, not very long, but a book, and the leading character in it says, to me, it was like a large window opening, this gaining some knowledge, like a large window opening. And I had that feeling about our school here, that for many of these West Virginia youth, they come here and they learn. They come from small towns, they come from larger towns, but they come with one purpose in mind, and that is to learn. That purpose may not be in very great evidence at times, but this is the purpose, like a big window opening on the world. So, Daniel Webster, the case, they said it well then. There are some who love a small college, and so it be today.
Can you describe some of the most memorable experiences that you've had at Glenville State College? That's going to be hard to narrow it down.
Yes. Now you're asking about my going to school here and then bringing it on up into the years I spent as a teacher. There are a great many experiences. I'm always reminded of working late in the evening, the twilight of the winter's sky, winter's day, working in the office in the corner of the administration building, grading papers, getting things ready to finish off within a week after they come back, Christmas holidays. And there was a sound, an eerie sound of the floor sort of relaxing after all the footsteps treading back and forth and the weight of individuals. The floor was relaxing. And you could hear this eerie sound down the hall. and it made you wonder what individuals have trod the floors here. It's sort of a pathetic type thing, the prophecy of things to come, the sound of their footstep receding, the weight of the student body relaxing, gone, and the building sort of shrugging itself once more to assume its shape and size. That seems to be a figment of the imagination, yet I experienced it. Down the hall there wasn't a student in sight. They were all gone for Christmas vacation, and there the building was responding to it. So be it. When these students come back, it takes its burden up again. And I'm saying this in a way, the burden of the school in our society. It takes place every time the student body returns, for better or worse. And I say, for better. They are better for having been here as students, and later on as alumni, as friends of the school. And when we say this, I always am reminded of Kipling and a few others. So be it. Amen and amen. Shall we close it off there? All right.
Thank you very much.
Not at all.